And we are live. There we go.
Oh, so I'm a bit out of sync.
Yeah, you're completely out of sync.
Well, I thought you were going to follow my cue because I was like counting down.
Yeah, but you were counting down to a thing that you had no idea when it was going to actually end.
Yeah, I know. Still. In fact, I kind of did it. I kind of did it for humorous effect anyway because I kind of knew I wasn't going to sync up together.
Well, there you go. And of course, as we all know, jokes are way more funnier when you explain them after the fact, Rory.
Yeah,
so,
well,
yeah.
I have a habit in my life of doing things on purpose to look like daft or silly, and people misinterpret them as, oh, poor Rory, he didn't understand something. And then I'm like, but now I have to explain the joke to you, and now I've ruined it because, like, the whole point is you're meant to get the joke the first time around.
No, you just want to
pat him on the head. It's just like, well done.
And I have to say, it happens a lot when I'm in the States.
Do you think? But do you think it's because you're not employing the American wink at the end? Because that's the wink. The wink at the end.
Yeah.
Yes. See, that's the most important part. That contextualizes it for us.
Yeah.
So, and it's that salesman charm that, bad. What was that show? The 1950 show about ad executives.
Oh, Mad Men.
Mad Men.
It's like the Mad Men approach. So you got to add the wink, Corey, is my American advice to you. There you go.
Yeah. Rory, I want you to go back. I want you to watch episode 3 of WandaVision again, towards the end, where Catherine Hahn is out front and Vision's talking to her, and she does the...
Yeah.
Because it's perfect.
See, I think, and this is meant in the most positive way possible, I think, Americans, so, just that small bunch of people are brought up to be largely earnest in their dealings with other people. So they don't assume there's going to be like the skullduggery of the Irish personality of like slipping in snide remarks whilst keeping a very straight face.
Anyway.
Ken is the exception that proves the rule, as they say.
Okay. I'm definitely one of those people. I'm definitely one of those people who takes everyone at their word. And so if you are like, where I'm like, oh, I'm just going to, use this lavatory over there. And someone says, oh, you can't use that one. I'll be like, oh, okay. Where do I go next? And they're like, oh, I'm kidding. And I'm like, oh, okay. And, so I don't usually get that humor myself. So maybe I'm part of the 80-20 rule of Americans who just taking you at your word. But if you edit a wink, it's all different.
You can't use that
like
one
just
again.
Sign you just hold up. It's like sarcasm.
Yeah.
Or like my favorite one, I actually want to get a sign which is like Jen, you'll know this, like the more you know.
Yes.
Dun, dun,
Yeah.
So I want just one of them, and it's just like
I think I'd have a monocle and I would just put it in and it would have a wink on it.
I think one day, this is what I'm picturing. One day we'll have like little badges on our jackets, and they'll look like, like little pins that have like an emoji sign. But you press them, and it'll be like an overlay, so you can become the meme. So it's almost like a virtual reality that's embedded in our reality, so that we can just kind of add that in our everyday interactions. So that's my prediction for the short-term future.
So you have to watch. I'm going to get the name wrong. Michael will correct me as he always does because I get things close but not quite. The series by Russell T Davies, which was like 5 years. Is that what it was called?
No. Try again.
No, because that's what's stuck in my head. Because I'll say about time, and that's completely wrong.
Yeah. I can't remember.
Okay.
I'm going to go check myself.
Yeah. So I'll explain it while he kind of Googles it.
Is it days like these or something like that?
It basically starts in the year 2025 and tracks a family over 5 years' time.
No, 10 years. 10 years. 10 years.
Is it 10 years? Okay.
Yeah.
Years and years. Ken was quicker.
Years and years. That's the one.
And it's kind of tough to watch under the current period because it brings up a lot of kind of topics around refugees, asylum seekers, but also like healthcare, the collapse of the finance system, kind of all wrapped up. But the daughter in it starts off as a teen, who is actually then the actress in It's a Sin. She's amazing. Is wearing this kind of visor, and she projects emotes onto it when she's talking. So she's kind of hiding her face. And there's just an incredibly poignant moment in it where it shows her face and how she's talking to her parents. And then the camera tracks around to see her expression underneath. And it's just like, oh! So it's just, he's so good.
So it's like futuristic 7-Up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, a little bit. It's again, I love the way it basically just follows this family's ups and mainly downs. But there's still elements of positivity in it as well.
And what's the name of the series again?
Years and Years.
Years and Years.
Yeah. It's more like a kind of a warning.
Right.
Is how I treat it, of like, if we follow our current path.
I will say, I'm so glad that you explained that scene because I can visualize it. But I probably, I'm very aware of what media I can and cannot watch right now. And I'm like, I don't need more warnings. Like, I'm living in the age of what we were warned about. And so I'm just like, yeah, I'm good.
Yeah. We found our realities blurring. We were like, we couldn't differentiate between, was that in the TV show or is that happening around us?
Yeah. The same thing with Schitt's Creek, which is, are you familiar with the series?
My other family members are watching it at the moment.
Yeah. And it's everyone's like, oh my gosh, it broke my heart. It's so great. The characters do this. But it starts off with a family who are incredibly obnoxious and self-centered. And because of that, are in a situation, of Schitt's Creek. And they... You
were meant to wink then, Jen, just saying.
Yeah, and thanks. So, and everyone's like, oh, you got to just keep on going. They really changed. And I just realized I cannot spend hours of watching really incredible, selfish people right now. I can't. I just can't do it. I just can't do it.
Everyone's saying get to that's I'm hearing get to season 3, and I'm like, but that's 26 episodes of watch to get to.
I can't do it. Exactly what that. So I appreciate and I believe what they say is true. I cannot put that information in my brain.
So if you want something life affirming, watch Ted Lasso.
Oh, I love that.
Finally, someone has actually watched it.
Oh my gosh. It was one of those things where Keith, my husband Keith and I were like, do we just keep on watching? Okay, maybe we should just save her to the next episode, the next thing. I loved it. And it was definitely these are people who are going through a path. And it was just so great to see a character who was just okay with being positive and all of the consequences that comes with. I'm just like, I want more seasons of that, please.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I because I avoided it for a long time. I only watched it in January, and I was like, why did I not watch this sooner? This would have got me through all this.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I love how people like him despite not wanting to.
Exactly. Yeah. Damn it, these biscuits are so good. Yes.
Yeah.
See, I can't recommend anything positive because everything I'm watching at the minute is just horrifying.
Oh, okay.
So, well, WandaVision isn't exactly going nicely for anybody involved.
Okay.
The Expanse, I'm currently working my way through season 2, and that's just a freaking barrel of laughs 24/7.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really good though. And we just finished American Horror Story 1984 a couple of nights ago because we're super late to the party and trying to catch up.
Yeah.
And although it was funny bearing witness to episode 8 of that season, which apparently is now listed as one of the worst ever episodes of television in the 21st century.
Yeah.
Because it's like, it goes all right, and it's just like,
yeah,
it gets bad.
Yeah. How do you keep going when you you just have a commitment to the end, or is it just like what's your relationship with follow through on a bad series? But
masochism generally forces me to finish a thing.
Yeah.
It's very rare that I'll bounce off
Really
something. I've watched literally some of the worst anime in history. King's Game is trash, absolute trash. 13 episodes of just why the hell is this thing being made? And I still watched it all.
Michael, I just picture you on the couch, unable to move, with like Kira sitting on top of you.
Yeah, my 4-pound cat just sort of like lying on. She has Jen. It's a legend in the streams now. Once I got stuck on the couch because I was under a weighted blanket, and then Kira decided to sit on my chest. Kira weighs 4 pounds. I could not move at all for a couple of hours, which was a delight. So yeah, me just there watching the worst anime. But no, this was by choice.
Yeah.
By choice, Rory.
Yeah. Do you have like one of the things that bothers me that I just can't seem to understand is when people watch something and then they just have this like something happened to them and there's this like indignity of having to, when really the pause or power button was available to them. And
yeah.
But it seems like you brave through it. It's an experience, and that's it. You know.
I think the hate watch is definitely it's a thing that from, let's say, the mid 2010s onwards that people will definitely do.
Yeah.
I definitely know there's a whole load of people I'm aware of who will watch Star Trek Discovery every week the day it comes out, and then just go into various forums and streams and just kick the crap out of it. And it's just like, if you don't want to watch it, don't watch it.
Yeah.
For me, it's a bit different because I used to work in TV and I like seeing how things go. Like, so,
right.
You know, if a show has been made and is being aired and continues to be aired, there must be a reason behind it. You know, we don't often get shows that go, you know, new to air nowadays that are then pulled off after like 1 or 2 episodes because they're so bad.
Right.
So I always like to sort of like, it's also sort of like a societal thing. You know, you were there, you were part of it.
Yeah.
We have an old soap opera in the UK called El Dorado from the late 80s. Which was on the BBC, and it was meant to be like, you know, they're like soap operas in the UK are a bit different to soap operas in the US, obviously.
Right.
In the US, they're more of a daytime thing, and over here they're like, you know, they're the big evening shows. And El Dorado was released to big fanfare. It was sun, sea, and sex, and soap opera, and it was so bad. They spent millions on this show, building a whole thing in Spain, and they would have to fly everybody out to do the shoots there and everything like that. They had to build facilities for everybody, and it died on its ass after about 8 months.
Right.
Because I don't think
they lost millions. They lost so much money on it, but there was a die-hard bunch of people who were just there sticking it out to the end. And it was joyous. And if you meet anybody who knows about this terrible, terrible show, like, you can share horror stories of, Marcos, and Pilar. What is this? What is this in the chat? What is going on here?
That's not me. That's Keith Baker, I think.
Yeah,
Keith Baker, get out of here.
See, you can't talk, you can't interrupt this because Discovery is a show that he watches that I don't really like, and so I don't watch it with him.
Yeah.
And yet he doesn't really like it either. So, but this is what he does. We have actually, so there's a show or an app called Pluto TV, which is streaming channels. And there's a channel called Buzzer, which is old game shows.
The game shows one.
That's been my pandemic watch, and So at 6:30, 6:30 p.m. we watch old card sharks, and it's really interesting because it's a nice also capsule of, because they ask a lot of like, out of 100 people, what do you think of if a woman does this, a man does that? And so it's interesting to see, and then everyone talks about so it's interesting to see how people answered, but. I don't know. There's something about watching people take risks and have everything all like buttoned up at the end, and that like it happened 40, 50 years ago. And so I'm not seeing someone like who is impacted. So I've been really enjoying old game shows.
I'm down with that. So when I heard that the Pluto was a thing, I went digging to see if I could find anything out about it. And if we could get it over here, we can't, which sucks.
Oh no, I'm sorry.
But then I heard that there was like a network, like the Buzzer Network was on it, because I am the game show fiend. I love game shows. I've been on some of them over here in the UK, and really? I was on The Chase, which of course made it to the States. So that was cool. And I was on another one called Tipping Point over here, which I actually won like $3,500 on, which was pretty cool.
Wow.
And I think I should probably see if I can get back on, go do some other ones. But yeah, I love them. I love game shows. So I should probably find another way.
So I'm going to jump in because I'm watching the chat, and Ken is making a very good point. Jen, we should probably allow you to introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure.
To everybody. Thanks, Ken.
Yeah.
This is the new meme now.
I'm just like the U.S. audience interpretation, So every once in a while, if you say something, I'll add
Yeah, Ken is basically like assuming the producer role now, because Jen, Rory, and I have been friends for like some years now. So of course this is just going to be an idiot chat for the bunch of us. Anyway, Jen, hello. Welcome to our show. This is the Hub Games Hangout. Who are you and why are you here?
Oh, hey. A hell of an introduction, Michael.
That's what I'm here for, the professionalism.
I'm Jenn Ellis, and I am the co-owner of Twogether Studios and also co-designer of all the games. And it is a two-person design studio with myself and Keith Baker, my husband. And we just came out with the Adventure Zone, Bureau of Balance game, which should be shipping this week in the UK and the EU. So, yeah.
Cool.
You heard it first here, folks.
Yeah.
And of course, lingering in the chat is Keith, the Hell Cow himself. So yeah, I guess he's keeping an eye just to make sure I
told him to have it on the background to increase the numbers of viewers, but keep them away.
So we've kind of gotten to know each other from cons, essentially. We kind of
you two are my favorite people to see at cons, I have to say. It was great to talk design with you. And
there's no wink.
It wasn't. It was a real wink. It was authentic a statement. But you're some of my favorite people in the industry, so I thank you so much for having me.
That's right. We share many things. A love of fine energy drinks. It was a PAX Unplugged where I discovered Monster did a ginger beer thing, and then I sort of left one in your booth mysteriously on the Sunday morning, and it was like, oh, F you, Ken. we can be popular. We can be liked.
Yes, and the other thing I love doing is sharing my outrage about some of our dining options in the United States. Whenever I'm, I think we were in the center of the country. I'll just say it like that: the center of the United States, in a fairly small city. And the only thing in walking distance from where we were was an Irish pub. That had some very interesting. There was a French fries with corned beef on it, I think, is what they had. Yeah. So those are fun things to share with you. because sometimes that does fly over the radar of us in the United States as something that is not really Irish in any sort of way.
So, so you've probably watched, is it Mountain Time?
Oh, Wild Mountain Time.
Wild Mountain Time.
You
The
know,
Irish movie that was made for Americans only.
Yes.
well, interestingly enough, you know, we were kind of going through a list of like, here's what's new on this streaming service. And I asked Keith for a synopsis, or we got like the new Entertainment Weekly. And he shared with me what it was about. And then I pretty much gave a hell no. So I have not seen it.
Yeah, don't.
I don't know. I think you should take it like Cats. Like, you have to watch it like Cats, Showgirls, and Wild Mountain Time.
Yeah, but
you know,
like Jen has just communicated that she doesn't have the time to kind of like suffer through terrible TV.
Yeah.
Download it when you're on your next flight and just prepare yourself.
Yeah, it's a very my brain is a very soft space inside, in which the garbage in, garbage out stuff is very. I'm very sensitive to, like, I can't watch horror movies. It's like I can't be like on the edge of something. You know, bad media is okay, but you know, and then I'm like, there's probably something else I could have done with that 2 hours. So
my respect for you, Jen, is just like deepening.
That doesn't mean I haven't watched some crappy TV and loved it in my life. I'm just saying.
True.
Mm-hmm.
Keith has stepped in saying that he wants a version of Wild Mountain Time where they apply the Cats filter to all the characters.
Well, I think they did it by putting mud onto like the female actor's face, because like Irish people walk around with mud on their face apparently all the time.
Yeah, sure.
It's such a mess. It's such a mess of a like when your national embassies start throwing out tweets about this movie and how freaking awful.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. The Irish embassy in New York, I believe it was, went, what is this crime? What have you done?
But they did it in a brilliantly like the whole of like the Irish community across the world just rose up and tore it to shreds in the most humorous way possible. Like Aer Lingus did it, and various journalists. It was hilarious to watch.
Who's the male actor in that? He was in a mini series with.
Oh, let me have a look.
Jamie Dornan, because he went to the same school that my daughters go to.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
But he was in a show where he was like a murderer.
Yes, The Fall.
Yes, I loved that. That was very good. And I have to say, most of my media are surrounding where you live is really about murder. So that's all I really know. Sorry.
Well, before we move on, then I would say there's a great movie called 1972.
Okay.
I think 72, 71, 72.
Okay.
Really, really good.
Okay. Is it along the same is it more murder?
It's about a squatty from the north of England who is on his first patrol in Northern Ireland during the height of the Troubles, and he gets separated from his squad. It's a really tense action movie.
Yeah, I think I've seen scenes for that. It's probably in my queue, and it's been one of those things where I have to have like anxious knitting while I watch it because it's like too much tension. I think in the preview they have like people like rattling their
because they'd use that to kind of warn.
Yeah.
Fun stuff does happen in Northern Ireland, I promise. Like,
really,
we're a relatively, modern society. We got electricity in like 1999. That was quite good.
Oh, that's good.
Yes. Sorry, Michael. I really should have kept a straight face for that. It's when I boiled my first egg. It was amazing.
Do you remember when we got fire in 1978? Geez, that was it was a grand time for everybody involved. Anyway, let's stop talking about crap. Generally started by me. Let's talk about games, y'all.
Yeah, sure.
Because,
right.
hey, you do make them.
We do.
And they look things like this.
Yeah.
Ooh, look at that.
Ooh.
And you're also responsible, of course, for one of my favorite games. This lovely little thing here, the wonderful Illimat as well. And we're going to point out this picture, which is just full of joy and delight.
Yay!
As well, which is a very, very lovely thing. So, what's your gaming history, Jen? What's your story?
My story is I've always loved to play games. As a kid, I have fond memories of all the classic stuff. Masterpiece. You guys have Masterpiece and all of that.
I have a copy of that downstairs somewhere, I think. Yeah. The Parker Brothers one.
Yes, and there's actually two different sets of art in the history of that game of how they produced it based on their. Anyway, I can go on, and all the other, just a lot of gaming as a kid, just cards and things like that. I never got really into hobby gaming until I met Keith, and of course introduced to Catan and stuff. So really, my perspective has been really coming from, I want to say, the outside, but just as a person who's always enjoyed games, but really never really drawn to going inside of a game store for one reason or another. And really, as soon as we met, I kind of knew that we wanted to make things together, make games, knowing that both of our perspectives together could be very unique and exciting. And I came from a really strange and varied background work-wise. I studied art therapy and was really in social services a lot, but really more of a recreational and a lot of play. So I started a camp for kids with HIV in Oregon. I worked in HIV services for a while, and also therapeutic recreation with people with disabilities and autism. But then I wanted to make money and survive. So in my 20s, I started working.
You moved into board gaming, apparently. So.
No,
I think there's a bit in between, Michael.
Yeah, the bit in between is I worked in software for about 20 years, and product development and getting that out there, and really kind of took a lot of the what's the experience of people around a table, how do they interact? What is people around any sort of product? And so, how my brain works is I like to take things and break it down into smaller parts, and I like to solve problems, which is things that we do as designers, and things that we create those opportunities for people in games. And they're interactive. So they're part interactive art. They're UX and UI comes into play. And so I kind of bring all of that into, I think, we're creating a milieu on someone's dining room table, and we're bringing something in. So when we undo that box, what are we creating? So, and it's really, I don't have this desire to make games with other people. I just really like making them with Keith, frankly. Just because,
cross that off my list.
Yeah, no. Well, actually, I would probably make an exception for it. Just because I think you are also think of a lot of those things that not every designer comes from those perspectives. There's another layer. There's other layers there. So not everyone can always be included in all the games you make, but you think about that some of the rare opportunities that you have that are that you can. It's kind of exciting. Anyway, did I just ramble?
What about? No, beautifully. It's all good. I mean, apparently Rory should just change his name to Keith, so that'll make life a lot easier. So
no, I'm actually just planning to take over his identity. Don't worry. It's all in process.
And this is where you then wink, Rory.
Yeah. No.
No, God, he's going to do it. Christ. What about stuff that you like playing now, Jen? We always like to find out what is hitting people's tables if you actually manage to get to play anything during these hectic times.
I do. I tend to actually, and this just happened in the last year or so. A lot of times, I will just share personally, you go to a convention and you just see all of the different games that are out on the market. And it can be really overwhelming. It can be overwhelming for people who are making choices about what they want to buy. But it's also overwhelming to me because I just look at all the possibilities of what people are doing. What are they doing with components? What are they trying to do? What I would do different? Wow, how much did that little meeple cost? Or you kind of start doing comparisons, which is a deathly thing to do as any creative person. So I actually have really started to focus just on playing a lot of very classic games that, that are, almost common out there, backgammon, cribbage, mahjong, all of those things, because they have so many of like just classic mechanics. They've totally been tested through time in hundreds of years. And there's new things that you can learn about them as you go. And so I've been really enjoying it. Now, so I tend to want to teach myself and learn how to play games that are just really old. I have a lot of very, very old Hoyle books, and I sometimes look up old card games and just say, what's this mechanic? What's that looking like? And but I do have, that sounds, really cool, but I have hundreds of games, of course, in my collection that don't always get played. I lend them out to neighbors, especially during the pandemic. I kind of did like this neighborhood, like game library from my house. That was fun, where I would just go, I'm going to just drop off a case of games to you. You've got kids of this age, I think they'd like them. That was kind of fun. Keith and I play Red 7 a lot.
Cool.
I just a nice, simple game. Vi, I really enjoy. We just play a lot of 2-player on the lighter side with dinner games right now. Because also your brain is kind of usually working on something and playtesting something else that you're working on. So.
And dealing with existence and
yes, surviving. Yeah.
I'm really happy to hear the mention of Mahjong in there, because a bunch of us have started playing it quite a lot here in Belfast, and my friend Connor, who is occasionally in the chat, Rory, obviously you know Connor as well.
Yep.
But he had an auto table imported, and it just elevates the Mahjong gaming experience from a really, really cool game to just a little bit more. And it's like you push the button and it's just like, it's fantastic. Yeah. So it's been an absolutely fantastic learning how to play, as you said, this game that is tested through the centuries. And there's a reason it's been around for so long, because it's so damn good. So
there's been a couple of pre-pandemic, a couple of meetup groups in our area to play, which I didn't get a chance to kind of connect with, but I was like, oh, this is my speed. This is what I would totally enjoy. So hopefully we can get those back in a year or so.
Also, when we get to do conventions again, I'll bring a travel set and we'll bully 2 other people into playing. And then we can absolutely school them, because we'll know what we're doing.
We could just say, this is the Board Game Geek. This is a really big Kickstarter, and I've got the only thing. And then people will line up and be like, oh yeah, sure, I'll try it, and then we'll just play that game.
Yeah, that's right. Keith's in, so all we need to do is just teach Rory. And
I was going to say I'm going to have to learn.
Yeah,
dude, it's a game of champions. Yeah, in 2026 when we have conventions again.
And Keith's cousin is was a world champion, shogi. Am I pronouncing that right? I don't know. Shogi player. And so there's a lot of like classic games that I also find. I remember when I was demoing Illimat. So Illimat uses a lot of traditional card game mechanics that are kind of mixed in with some dynamic elements there. At UK Games Expo, by and large, people got them a lot quicker than in other places that I've done the demo, because I feel like people still play more cards for some reason there. I don't know. So
Cool.
Yeah.
So Rory
Yeah.
normally has a reasons behind sort of like, hey, why have we got this person, and why have we asked this person to come on? So Rory, what's the thinking behind having Jenn on, as opposed to us just having a lovely catch up?
Well, because I think like myself and Jenn have met, and I'm quite conscious that Jenn and Keith are a partnership and kind of run the business together, and that has parallels to Anita and myself running the business. And also, I tend to be the front person for Hub Games. I walk by the booth. Keith tends to be the front person. People who are kind of aware of him because of his kind of musical heritage as well are talking to him. So I think I'm very aware of Twogether Studios, and also very aware of Jenn and the contribution she makes to the company. If Keith has,
that's fine.
Oh yeah, I'm sure Keith is aware of all of this as well. So I just thought it was an opportunity, because I think from the kind of business perspective as well, I thought it would be interesting to talk to Jenn. And provide that opportunity to shine, because we've had incredible conversations together, usually leaning on each other in some way, like thinking about the business side of things. And I just wanted to kind of use this, like every talk, as an excuse to talk to people who we kind of enjoy or admire, and Jenn would be one of those.
Oh, thanks. I would say that, even though I knew right from the start I wanted to have a creative partnership with Keith in our relationship, it took us quite a while until we made a commitment to have a business. And most of that is because I don't want to ruin my marriage. Mm-hmm. Like, that's the most important relationship of my life. And and we're both people who don't have children. And so our work is a very big primary thing in our life, and how to navigate that. And because I was 38 when I met Keith, I'm 48 now. I was very inclined to be as to be really good at the stuff that I do, and I had a lot of ego trapped in that, and that's been actually really difficult to be like, I'm an executive at GE, and or on the executive path, and then I'm at a convention and people, say, "Where's Keith?" Mm-hmm. It was really much harder than it is now. But I also have had to navigate Keith is a really amazing game designer, and has, through the worlds that he's created, has really impacted a lot of people, and they love talking to him about it. I do not like talking about D&D. It's not my favorite RPG system. And so I'm really okay with just going, talk to Keith about that. Mm-hmm. So, but it has, I think it's helped over the years that I've become more and more comfortable asserting myself and what I do as a designer and as business person in games, because I really came in as an outsider. And I feel like over the years, I've been able to say, I want my name on the box. And I'm the owner of this company, and really establishing and putting out there how I would like to be, represented when talked about with this, and separating how that from my co-designer, who is incredible. What still bothers me is that when people always assume that anything that was good or anything that we've done together was made by him, or only him, when my name is on the box, and so that is still hard.
And I mean, there's so much just in what you've said that I can kind of like relate to and dive into. I think, there's so much in terms of that, like managing that relationship side of things. But one thing I wanted to kind of touch on was like what we've noticed is that there's a kind of almost like a desire to split a company or any kind of creative force into, well, they're the creative one
Yes.
And they're the business-minded person.
Yes.
And anyone who knows myself and Anita are like both. We've had to become better at business, but our default is the creative side. Like we went to art college together.
Yeah.
We helped each other with projects. We've always admired each other's work. Yeah. And and we had to kind of form the business together. But we would meet like the bank or people interviewing us, and the assumption was, well, Rory's the creative and you're kind of tagging along. And it's like, no, like the brand of Rory Story Cubes was, we had an amazing graphic designer, but still a lot of the intent behind it is shaped by Anita. Yeah. And Michael, you'll know this in terms of the usability side of it. But she's completely an unsung person because she doesn't seek the limelight. She would appreciate it. She would appreciate the recognition.
Yeah. That's exactly. It is such a tightrope to go. Is I really, I don't necessarily need to be a guest at a convention or other things. I don't need to have anybody, but it is a thing where it's like, but it's not all black and white. And I think that's, my thought process sometimes when I hear that is, sometimes my first reaction is disappointment, but then I also think it's the larger issue that people think that creativity is owned by a small group of people rather than something that we're capable of, and that can be utilized in different ways. Mm-hmm. And it's about our knowledge of and being tapped into everyone else's creative stuff. And that, it's the whole idea that people who are creative are, irresponsible. It's kind of along the same lines of that thing, and Keith's had to do a lot of stuff too. He has to do our taxes and things that he's much better at that than I am. But it does take creative power to figure out how to navigate through shipping through a pandemic and getting back to people and, all sorts of things that we have to do.
It's kind of like reminds me of like the front person in a band, getting all the attention when it's like, well, the music is comprised of, all of these people. And I was very aware of it with a friend's band where that would often happen. And yet some of the, the key content was coming, collectively from the group, but everyone wants to talk about the front people for it.
Yeah. And it makes me also, it has extended out to things like when people get really excited about an illustrator working on a game, I think, well, there's a graphic designer that also worked on that and that you're not seeing. And those two have to work together in order for you to experience the beauty of that illustration. And there has to be, so it kind of extends out into other things of that you need a team. It's not just one person. Didn't you tell me, Rory, one time that that there's some game studios, they're putting like a fictitious name on the box that is a conglomeration of people?
Yeah, so Brain Games in Latvia did it for Ice Cool. And so they decided, because everyone's kind of contributing to it, they just made up a fictional inventor's name to indicate, well, that's all of us. We all contributed to that project.
I mean, I guess it's Prospero Hall as well is essentially, their games come out under the Prospero Hall name as opposed to, person A did this, person B did this. So, it's interesting to see that this sort of like catch-all designer title, I guess, is coming out a lot more. It's nice as well because I mean we remember like the Milton Bradley games, the Parker games of the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and none of those folks who designed them got any credit,
right?
Because it was this was made by this company, and it's like no, it was made by the people in your company, so give them the credit.
Yeah, I definitely get. I'm on the fence sometimes about, having so many names on the thing, on the game, on the product. When I also, or someone saying, well, the designer should have credit and the illustrator, because then I think, well, there's also this employee that works at this publisher that's a developer that's making this into a product as a whole that's done a fantastic thing. In fact, if you took out their thing, you probably wouldn't love this as much. Like so it's an interesting thing of how do we kind of balance between giving credit to the individuals who all contribute, and also, but sometimes that's some and not all, and sometimes those developers aren't being credited because they're employees and they don't want, that company doesn't want to have issues later. And
I actually have, but I think you make a really good point. Like, it's that, how far do you go with that inclusion? We know, I think a brilliant editor, Britta Stockman, who used to work with Hoch in Germany and has since left. But she would talk about a lot of games coming in by like big name designers and them having to essentially rework the game to the point where the original concept is barely recognizable, but that those designers get the credit for the game. And she has to be like,
okay. Oh, the things that we could say.
Actually, we'll have to get Britta on. I think she would be very interesting.
Britta spills the tea. A Hub Games Hangout 2-hour special. It's just getting progressively more and more drunk. It's just like, and then there's this guy.
But it's an interesting. I think it is an interesting conversation. Like we've taken a step to kind of, and I remember when I was kind of starting in Germany, the authors were really fighting hard for recognition with kind of German publishers to get their names onto their boxes and kind of help make that happen. And it's kind of become the norm now, and we've gone a bit further, and we've got illustrators getting onto the box as well. But like that, there is, I would love for people to understand that there's far more involved in making a game, and it's this kind of like shorthand notion of celebrity, of conflating it down to the creators. Because my name is on, like, literally on Story Cubes, but it's like I could not take the responsibility for it being successful. It's one portion of the whole thing, but there's a narrative that people want to tell that conflates it.
And it is, sometimes it is about the story of the product in the end. I hate to say it, it's the story of what makes people say yes to bringing that into their home. And it is, in some ways, I think of what Michael was saying about watching bad movies, is that if you're, in the film, sometimes you just think you're unraveling all the decisions that were made here to try to get to this point. And sometimes those decisions end up in nobody's name on the box or one person's name on the box, because it has to get out, at some point. And, but it also, I often think sometimes in the end, I'm a person who always liked playing games, but I never knew a game designer's name in my whole life until I met Keith. And I was like, that's a job. And
you're a game designer?
Okay. And and I think that for the majority of people, they don't really think about it. They just think about what that thing is that they bought and the stories and what that is. A lot of times I think of the Thanksgiving holiday in the US is a big time for families to play games together who don't normally do it. It's like either, card games and things like that, or Monopoly, and because it's a touchstone in the life of a family of like, we do this every year. They're not really thinking of the history of Monopoly. They're not thinking of, they're thinking that I'm always the shoe. And they're not thinking of, isn't Monopoly a terrible game compared to everything else? It's just part of their life, and there's good memories around it, and they have fun. And I like making those games. I like that bring people together, and that create some memories or stories or conversations. So, yeah.
So I know, like, your partnership, I'm assuming you're both in the same house at the moment under kind of quarantine.
I'm literally right now thousands of miles from.
Okay.
That's the first time in yeah.
Oh yes, because you were traveling, but so I'm kind of reflecting on our experience that, like a lot of people when they're in a kind of work relationship, you can come home and when you've had a crappy day, you can kind of like pour everything onto your partner, and you can kind of hope that they will be understanding and hear that. When you're both in the company together, the difference is you're experiencing the highs and the lows together. And it's great when it's high, but when it's low, that's challenging. Like, and how do you kind of find that release of support during those times?
Well, first, we really like spending time together. I think that's been huge. Like at the beginning of the pandemic, we're like, we went on a 7-week road tour in a van together. Like we were in a litter box together for 7 weeks. We can do anything. And now we're like, oh, this is much longer than being on the road trip. But we just enjoy each other's company. And I think that helps a lot. But when it comes down to it, a lot of times in the course of the day, there are some things that we experience together. There's another delay in shipping, or this financial thing happened, or there's a timeline of us to get a new product out or new product pitch out, and we're just not there mentally to figure this out, So those things are happening concurrently to both of us, but then there's things that are happening to us individually too, because we have different tasks. I think I use the statement a lot. First of all, Keith is an amazingly patient and kind person, which helps. I'm not always as patient and kind as he is. And I had to recognize that. And when I sometimes express myself, I have said, okay, I'm going to say this how I'm feeling as a wife talking to her husband, rather than as, we're working together. And so, because sometimes you say things that are, and your brain is in like a mode where it's, here's a business problem that has to be solved, but really you're trying to share an emotional thing about that problem. And so sometimes I have to preface it of, okay, I'm actually just talking as like, husband and wife are talking about, or, partners that are talking about something. This is a feelings conversation, not a business problem conversation. And that helps, just to be really clear about that. But that's certainly a learned path, that you have to make sure that you're not always talking from the perspective of, we have to figure out the problem, but sometimes you have to say the feelings conversations too.
So, Michael, you can probably relate to this. You've kind of brought up flashbacks for me of when we were working on games like kind of Mega City, where myself and Anita would get quite passionate over something and would be kind of we would be discussing it with each other from our perspective, but you can see everyone kind of like sitting back, kind of going.
It's like, I grew up in a house where the parents argued a lot, and in those first sort of like couple of years working at Creativity Hub, Stroke Hub Games, I honest to God got a lot of PTSD flashback sort of things going on there. Just like, why are mum and dad shouting at each other? I don't like it.
Yeah.
But we never shouted.
No. But that's where I thought it was going to go,
right?
Because that's what I was used to. And if you have two people who are in a very sort of like tightly bonded, strong relationship, you think that immediately. Well, I think a lot of the time, any level of disagreement is going to lead to like worse stuff. And yeah, and you're right. They were fighting because I'm a bad child. It's true.
I don't think that's funny, Ken.
I'm gonna punch him in the head when I see him.
He's only saying it because he's so far away.
Oh
yeah. See how bad I am when I whack you in the skull.
I think we get the most intense conversation when we are actually in. It's funny because my favorite part of working is when we are working on the design of a game, which is actually not always, and especially in the last year, the majority of time that we spend. Like a lot of the other things of the business take more time than actually doing that, as far as interaction time face to face, because we're like what's the direction we should go on something. So like the Adventure Zone, we like, how do you make a game that is DM-less but still has tension, that still is, you know, all these other things. So what's our approach? And you can both be in your head about things on that. And sometimes both of our ideas are pre-verbal. And so there's a lot more like, I don't have a why of why I want this, but I want it right now. And this is how I want this to be. And that's usually when the most tension happens. And yet that's my favorite part, because I think we're both kind of excited about the ideas there. We also walk. And so during that time, we will like walk and talk. So we get a lot of energy out while we're doing it. So we're not like, so we can kind of get some tension out, and we stand up and use big chalkboards and whiteboards and stuff rather than sit down or all that stuff.
Like, I think that's a big part of it is you both want the thing to be better, and you know the thing can be better. Yeah. And you're both fighting, you know, you're kind of fighting to make it the best thing it can be. And it's a case of like, you're maybe here, but you kind of align at some point and find, okay, this is the common thing we want. And you're like, I think the important thing is to say, actually, yeah, you're right. Like, that's a better approach.
And be very clear about that is, and both saying that to each other is really, it's actually very freeing. I've learned is to say, or also, well, let's try it and then see, you know, like nothing gets harmed in the early stages of something, of trying it and see. So
we've often laughed after we left the studio at the faces on the team.
Thanks, Dad. Cheers. I'm just going to come in one morning. It's just like, right, how are we going to mess them up today? All right, let's go.
They're all like staged arguments for today.
I can't believe you hit that grown-up on the way into the office. Why did you leave them there? It's just like,
I think both Keith and I are kind of sensitive souls, so we tend to try to be really, really careful, but also like filled with a lot of energy inside. And so we, so I think most of our attention stuff is more like, you know, bottled up a little bit more. But it's certainly also, I'm a very directive communicator, and Keith will use a lot of words and sometimes massage those and keep on saying it. And that's usually, and I've certainly had to learn that he wasn't trying to make his point again. He was just, he needs to say it again. And so, but usually that's
just that working through it kind of thing. I think I'm pretty similar, as Rory will attest.
Yeah. I'm like, I already said yes. I already said yes. Stop talking, you know.
Oh, Christ, why I am Keith.
I've moved on to 3 other things now.
Yeah, next on my agenda, like, I've got a whole list of things to get through.
So go back to your taxes, Michael. God, shut up. Oh, man. Yeah. All right, I'm coming to some realizations.
That's okay.
All right, such is life. we reckon these chats are as much therapy sessions for me and Rory as they are interviews. So it's like,
I've shared a lot of personal things on the internet in this conversation so far. So, but it's, you know, it's just,
I deem it a good chat if it's gone off the planned map, and it has. So I'm like,
okay.
Success. No, because that's where the interesting stuff happens. Like, I kind of listen to a conversation to go, that's the thing to talk about.
Yeah.
Because, you know, there's lots of people talking about the latest games, which we will talk more about.
Yeah.
But I think it's very easy to present the game, and I'm kind of much more interested because we get to see the people behind the scenes, and I'd love the people who are watching to see more of the people behind the scenes and not just the game itself.
You say that's easy to present, but frankly, I have to say, not having conventions, like I usually by this stage of a game coming out, you have made that pitch like hundreds and hundreds of times that it's just part of your muscle memory. And that is not true right now for me. Like, I'm just like, I mean, I'm not that bad, but but it's one of those things where I just realize, wow, that was really, I've usually honed it so much by this point.
So Jenn, what's this new game that you're working on?
Oh, hey, thanks.
Pretend we're 2 nerds who've just come up to you at what would be
Rory, how do we know Jen's name?
I have a name tag.
We had to look at her name tag.
Yeah.
I think that's rude. Just going straight up to somebody and going, "Hey, name badge."
Well,
person.
Keith was busy.
Okay, all right.
No,
that's for everybody watching.
Here's what it would sound like. I was here because I wanted Keith to sign my book, but do you know anything about this game? That's what it would be. And I'd be like, yeah, my name's on it. But
you're called Keith?
And that's what they would say, Michael.
Yeah, I know. People are trash.
So the Adventure Zone is a actual play podcast of 3 adult brothers who play with their dad, and it is it's hosted by the McElroy brothers, who have many different podcasts. It's
actually 24 different podcasts.
Yeah, it's.
Hang on, Michael, don't interrupt. Okay.
Yeah, so
we're at a convention.
So they are epically popular. And one of the things that and we met them and pitched quite a few games to them, but they were looking for a kind of like a Hero Quest light in the Adventure Zone game for the Adventure Zone property. And so one thing that we did is really what we do with any of the things that we work with, any of the products and brands and stuff, is, and by the way, it will ship in the EU and the UK starting next week. So from Ireland, by the way. What was I saying? You interrupted me, Michael. It's all your fault.
Games, McElroy brothers.
McElroy brothers.
Tell us on the game.
Yeah. So we wanted a game that took away the need to have a DM, because what we saw is that a lot of people who were fans of the show, look at those pretzels. A lot of people who are friends of the show or are fans of the show who really enjoyed it but didn't really play D&D themselves. And one of the characteristics of what makes this a wildly popular podcast and also a graphic novel series, New York Times bestseller, is it's not about playing D&D and the rules. It's really about the storytelling, a collaborative storytelling between people, and kind of being free with a group of people to use your imagination and to kind of bounce off one another, and not to worry too much about what's inside of the world. I mean, there's a fantasy Costco in which Garfield, is giving you things in their world. So it's really, really about embracing the joy of trying and collaborative storytelling. And we were just really inspired by the type of people who would go to their live events. There were mostly young women in the audience who were in their early 20s, who really loved D&D, who, it was like the opposite gender representation of what you would go to at a convention. And what we really wanted to do is just take away a lot of the barriers that we saw, and to try to recreate that freedom of storytelling together. So it is you use 3 stacks of cards and challenges that are kind of dynamically generates an adventure, and those 3 stacks of cards kind of interlock and work together to create a scene. You create your character within a couple of minutes. You roll up your character and you choose a different challenge to overcome. You use a combination of helping each other with tokens and die rolls to overcome those challenges. It's about 2 hours, no need for a DM, and it's light fun. A lot of people are playing with kids who are younger than 13 as like as a new RPG experience. So it's a great RPG when it is you want a lighter experience than a D&D, or as I like to call it, if D&D was a party game. And and for younger people as well. So
cool. I think that line is the starter. Imagine D&D was a party game.
Yeah, that's it. I usually get it first. It was just Michael's fault.
Yeah, Michael, you were like that. I do have to comment, Michael, you're like that person who comes up to the booth and says, "Tell me about the game," and then spends the whole time like picking up the pieces and looking at them and putting them back down and like looking at cards, because that
I have attention issues. Yeah,
that thing's scrolling on the screen.
Well, and then all the scrolling, I was looking at myself. I was like, okay, those are petals. So I'm glad everyone got to see how difficult it is to do a pitch when you don't have a convention. But it's if D&D was a party game, and great for 2 to up to 6 players, and it's 2 to 5 on the box, but there's a 6-player variant.
Cool.
And
yeah, this is me.
Yeah. My daughter got interested in D&D through listening to the Adventure Zone, and nearly got her character killed like in the second game because she tried to behave the way they do.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, people who are like, "Oh, well, how do you do a game based on a D&D?" I'm like, they're not really playing D&D, guys. Like, they're not playing with those rules, and it's not really about it for their fans. So we tried to kind of get all that. What's the community about? And I think it's what makes it wildly popular for people is I used to explain it when I would sit in the audience and kind of ask people. So, I totally felt like my mother. I always used to make fun of my mom when I was little, like, how come you talk to strangers all the time and ask them questions? But that's what I do a lot when I'm researching an audience. I'll be like, so do you listen to their other podcasts? What do you like about it? And what I gathered is that it's like being at the coolest house on the block and the funniest brothers, and you're in their basement playing a game together. And so we just wanted to design something that made it easy to replicate that in your own home. And so I think we did. I mean, people like really enjoying the game and getting great reviews. So I'm excited about it. But I always find it difficult. It's one of those things I knew in marrying Keith, and everything that he designs, he really like pushes the boundary of what a genre is, or like a category. And so like with Gloom, it's transparent storytelling, but it's a card game. And with this, people call it a board game. Some people call it an RPG. I'm sure people have done that with Untold a little bit as well. So it's defining it as we go and as we release it. But if D&D was a party game, it seems to be what sticks. It's kind of
I really like that.
With Illimat, the thing that I found that stuck with people is, I would say it's like something you found in your grandfather's attic, and people went, "Ooh," and then they would get it. So. Until somebody once said, "Well, my grandfather was a Nazi," and I found a really weird thing. I was like, "Okay, that didn't work with you." So.
Oh my God.
I mean, there is something like joyously occultish about Illimat, it must be said. Like the ceremony of it all, and the look and the vibe.
Yeah.
It looks like it should come with like a layer of dust underneath the cling wrap, so when you take it off.
Yeah, exactly.
Actually, on the Illimat subject, where is it? Keep vamping, Rory. I'm busy.
Yeah. So, I had the kind of pleasure of playtesting the Adventure Zone. How do you find people's reaction to it who maybe don't know the Adventure Zone? What's the hook for them?
What's the hook for them? I think for them, it's just the same thing, that the hook that got people into the Adventure Zone. As long as it's not a dogma of you must know everything in the history of that's ever been said in this podcast, that everyone just needs to unplug a little bit, and spending a couple of hours in a world in which we're all working together, and there's a possibility that we can beat something. is something exciting for people, and
Mhm.
without a lot of effort, without like a lot of math. We don't have to figure out how to, there's not a big barrier to entry to experience this. I think a lot of people want that experience. And I think the joy is people discovering that they can make up stories. This is not something that just, nerdy people do, or my cousin does. And, I don't really know him, but he seems like he really likes it. But it's something available to everybody to make stories. So
cool. And so, like, can you name something that, like, for yourself and Keith, you're like, that moment when you came up with something that's in the game where you're like, oh, this is just so cool, and I can't wait for people to discover, because usually, a game has to have that to get published.
Yeah,
I think it has to have something in it where you're both like, yeah, this is the reason why this game exists. Is like, what is it for you? Is it the same thing, or is it different in the game?
Well, component wise, in the standard game, I think it's, to me, the stupid humongous die that is a 20-sided die, but it's really a d6, and it's 3 d6s with 2 other variables in it. And for me, that was like a really fun thing, because it just kept the permutations low as far as what we can do with the outcomes on it. But it really gives this idea of like, everybody can see the die roll experience of what the result is, because it's a big die. And so you have that tension there that everyone can see, almost like everyone looking at a craps table, And I also really love, just if you look at a card on a challenge, and just with all of the prompts that are on there, you can make the funniest story, even if you're not a very funny person. And it doesn't, or just an absurdity. And I think that's something about the McElroys, is it allows you to be slightly absurd in this fantasy world. And so I love it when people just post things like, here's a strange quote that came out of this. And to me, that strange quote is exactly that outcome that we wanted. And that's the thing. In the limited edition version, there was something that I added that I really wanted to do, which is every playtest, there's a place, it's like Adventure Mart, if you will, called Fantasy Costco, where
all your dreams come true.
Where all your dreams come true. And every time we would play test this game, people would spontaneously play the theme song that is in that and sing it. Even people who have never, that we did testing with, who have never, we had mixed tables of people who didn't know the property. Some people did. By the end, everyone was singing it. So I made this little 3D standee that you put the cards in, that looks like a Fantasy Costco. And the end, there's like a little QR code in the loading dock of Fantasy Costco. And if you swipe your phone on it, it'll play the Fantasy Costco theme song. But I didn't tell anybody it was there, and I just wanted people to discover it so that they have access to the theme song at their table. So
that's a delight.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah, with Illimat, it's the tooth. Like, I just love that. Like, the illustrator was like, I have a bear tooth that my dad gave me that I always kept. And she's like, but you would never put that in the game. I'm like, oh, I would put a tooth in the game. So,
well, on the subject of Illimat, that's what I was digging around for. This is one of my favorite things in all board gaming ever.
Yeah.
Because of course the Illimat is like, it's from the Decembrists and yourselves as well. But this is the how to play, and it's on vinyl.
Yeah.
Because of course it's on bloody vinyl.
Take it out of the sleeves. I mean, it's beautiful vinyl. It's like,
wow.
Yeah. So I made a vinyl record. That was amazing. So we recorded a voiceover with Colin Malloy, the lead singer. And I just remembered like old 70s, like growing up, we had like How to Do the Hustle vinyl record. And it was like how to steps and like typing, how to type. And they would have like cool things in there. And it just seemed like if this was like an old game, it could have this. And I was talking with Colin, he's like, that design would make a really good 10-inch cover. And I was like, okay, let's do it. Little did I know how difficult it is. Someone had to say something. Someone said something to me of like, oh, well, do you have the masters? Because like after it went through, certain engineering process, and I've never, I'm not a recording professional. Obviously, I had help. I literally thought like the masters were just something I overheard at like TV shows, like on Empire and stuff.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, okay. But that's one of the favorite things that I made. And the little illustration insert with that is one of my favorites too.
It's absolutely lovely.
And it is one of the joys of working, having Kickstarter and also working with properties that already have, and there's like little beeps in the, by the way, in the record that point to different illustrations on there. But it's one of the joys of working with people who have a product and or a brand and an audience, is that you can do really fun things like that. And someone will buy it and you won't lose money. So, or at least break even, because some of those things are like, I'm not, I didn't make money on the records, but I wanted to make a record and it seemed like a really cool, fun thing. And so we got to do it. So
it's like, I think one of the things that I love about making games is it is like the in-jokes. It is the little things that mean a lot to you. And most people won't notice them. Like, the dings on the record, for example.
Yeah.
People, most people, but, that just delights you no end, which is great.
Yeah. Yeah.
For me, it's like, putting friends and stuff into games. And I just, it's a really lovely privilege to have, I think. Just being able to do that makes me pretty happy.
Rory, what's your thing with Prisma Arena that is was your delight thing?
Oh, I think figuring out that we could actually make a game with removable stickers.
I have to say, I was like, he's going to say removable stickers, because I remember you explaining your eyes would be like, it's going to have removable stickers. So.
Yeah, but I was telling you at a time when I didn't know if it was going to work or not.
Yeah, this took a lot.
It took a lot of convincing of a lot of people that it was worth doing.
Really? Because it was more expensive than.
Well, it wasn't a known factor, and it was potentially it was going to cost more to do it. But for me, it was the impact that it would have on the person who received the game.
Yeah,
I was like, we have to try and make this work.
Yeah, it's the same thing with the Adventure Zone, where the original plan was to have little whiteboard character sheets, but everyone just, when you kind of create something, you kind of want to keep it of some level, and so that's why we went with paper books.
I mean, that's a really interesting thing when it comes to game design. When we were working on Untold as a storytelling game, when we were working on it, it was just essentially flat sheets of card, like tower size card, and we were putting the dice on it, and the benefit of that was it was highly portable. And I kind of I still feel a little bit sad that we gave up the portability of the game, that you could just stick it in your bag and carry it with you, to having the kind of usability thing of the dice not sliding. So it was this kind of trade-off of, do we want it so that when the dice are placed, they don't get knocked, and make it clear where they go, versus the complete flexibility. And it's one thing I'd kind of love to go back at some point and do the travel version of Untold, because it's, like you said, it's that getting people together and telling stories with the minimal kind of barrier to doing it.
Right. Oh yeah. Like the Adventure Zone, where I was thinking of that audience, and I was thinking of a lot of people in their early 20s don't have a dining room table. They have a coffee table, or they meet at a bar. So wanting to make the footprint of the game much as small as possible, of how you set it out, so that you can have a meal around it if you wanted to. Which, believe it or not, all of the work on making it portable and have a small footprint really allowed it to be something that you can play over stream really, really well and easily, which at the start of the pandemic, I wasn't sure if people still wanted to do things like, or cared about, things like games yet. So I just signed up to do a stream every single day with people who had pre-ordered the game. So I did like 60 streams.
Wow.
Or something, which was really great because I kind of got to put it through its paces before it went to final print and see how it worked.
That footprint thing is something that we hold kind of really dear, and Anita would kind of frame it as the game has to fit on an IKEA table. And I still remember being at, I think it was Gen Con, and talking to Greenbrier so about Cerebria. And I was saying, this game looks great, but in Europe, I was like, no one's got a table that big.
Yeah.
It's like most tables are like IKEA size tables, and they were like, oh yeah, that's a really good point. And then they didn't listen at all. Like they just still.
And I'm not sure if it's like this in Illimat was something that portability was really important to me from a design perspective. If I want to try to make a game that feels like something that's been around for a while and kind of traversed, that's something that like people put in a pack and moved around with. Also, I wanted it on cloth rather than cardboard that folds. Same thing, but it's a really small box, and so which is great for people. People are like, I love the size of this box, and so people travel with it and they bring it around places. But it's not what a lot of distributors liked and retailers, brick and mortar retailers liked. Until I made some shelf talkers and other things. So it was kind of one of those things of, why do you have a big box for a small amount of components, and so many different reasons for that.
Well, and that's one of the, the fun things from the business side of the kind of game publishing is like the game has to serve multiple things at different stages. And like we would describe it from, it has to do something for the manufacturer to make their life easier. It has to make the shipping company's life easy. It has to make the distributor's life easy, the retailers, the buyer, and then the player, like the person who actually owns the game. And the really simple thing is, and I think like Pokemon do it really well with their trainer boxes, because they sell with a cardboard insert that pushes the lid up. So it looks bigger on the shelf, and when you're giving it to someone, it's bigger, but it's literally just a cardboard insert, and then you take that out and the box closes down to the size of the cards. And that is literally, a game needs to look bigger on the shelf, and then small with as little waste as possible. And traditionally, though, there's been a huge amount of waste in terms of plastic and all of that. And I think that's the challenge we have is, we find ways to make our games into Transformers, where it's like they do one thing on the shelf, something different when they arrive. But then again, that creates a problem for shipping, because you're paying for all this air. Or people kind of need to shift their perspective of where they place value. As well.
And I think with more, this brings in a conversation of also how do people put value into the cost of shipping, because if it was known to everyone that something physically bigger, even though weight is not necessarily an option, is more expensive to ship and put on a cargo ship and everything. But I sometimes think that things like Amazon and everything shipping for free, there's no value in understanding, the living wage of the person who has to pick it and the person who has to deliver it and all this other stuff, and where does that go?
So this is, Michael, I don't think you've even heard this, but excuse me, it's a really interesting case of like the issue with regard to shipping at the moment. So we're trying to get Combo Clash, our new game. It's done. We're trying to get a chip. They're planning to try and get it shipped before Chinese New Year, which is early February. So
those costs are pretty high right now.
the game is done. I think we've a decent like shipping price, but the factory contacted us to say because of the backlog, drivers are having to sit in their trucks for numerous days at the port to get the stuff like into the port and delivered. And they're saying, and it's Chinese New Year, and like half of the drivers have gone home already to celebrate. So the cost of hiring a driver, we're having to pay extra for like find a truck driver and pay them extra to sit for a longer period at the port because of the delays. Like, it was long enough as it was, but now it's longer because of Chinese New Year. And I'm like, the person buying the game has no idea what's going into it. I just thought it's because we've heard about the containers and all that, but I was like, man, just the human aspect, because essentially the biggest cost with games come from the human interaction with the game. If it's every bit of handling that has to go on, it's what ramps the cost up.
Yeah.
Including the person who has to get your, drive the truck.
Yeah, or offload the container, or I had a container in Long Beach, California that was delivered in early December, or it was I had 2 full containers plus a half a container, and the 2 full containers got out, which was kind of a miracle. The third one, it was delivered. It left China in October. It was delivered in December. It's usually that's a 2-week journey, but it was so delayed. It was moored outside just to find a spot to get offloaded for 9 days, just to wait in LA for that spot. And then it was so congested there that it was just delivered like 2 weeks ago. Like it took another month to go 80 miles to the fulfillment center. So, but I kind of wonder just kind of where retail is going, and how sticky that will be, as far as how important that last mile to the consumer shipping experience will be, and how much of a premium or not, or what value people will put on that in the long term.
I keep waiting. I kind of half expect. I don't know if it'll happen. It will come to a point of essentially fewer higher priced games. As one way is people will just accept that they have less, but appreciate the cost that goes into actually manufacturing them.
I think that's an interesting perspective. I do see fewer games just from what choices retailers choose to stock. That it's just, the top 10, top 20, and that's it, pretty much. And it's understandable in some ways.
I'm kind of curious, Michael, what you think about this. I would imagine we're going to see more, I know there's a lot of print and play at the moment, but I kind of think we're going to see even more of that. And those games, that being the kind of testing period for a game to build its audience and potentially get carried on and manufactured, because it's a way of building an audience or community for the game and know that it's worth making. Because at the moment, a lot of us are taking, is it crapshoots, where we're just kind of rolling the dice with a new game because you don't know how it's going to be received. Like even with a game with a strong following like Adventure Zone, you don't know where the mindset is of the audience. And we found out with the release of like art themed story cube sets is like that people can kind of move on from something.
Yep.
If you're just like a few months off.
Yeah.
So I think print and play is a good way of kind of connecting with people and really whittling the game down to what's really vital for it. Yeah.
I'm not sure how many people, I mean, my experience with print and play stuff is that people asked for it, but very few people actually ever printed it and played it. And so I'm kind of curious about how that's going to work and what kind of sample you get. And if it just is going to become more, I do feel like more products that are more PDFs. So we spend a lot of our time on a lot of the things that Keith does. We have a a small offshoot for Twogether Studios called KB Presents, which is really Keith's work with RPGs and Eberron, and those have been doing very well for us. In fact, that's been our bread and butter for the last year and a half, and so much easier to bring to market because they're print on demand and such. And I'm very intrigued about what print on demand options are too, as well.
Well, and I think that's the kind of whole evolution of the thing together. And it exists, like, at the moment, I get it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but as the cost of games and the shipping time goes up, if people start changing how they design the print on demand games using existing components, like, the
rise of 3D printing as well, those custom components things. So you can definitely see that having if not a ground shifting effect, it's certainly going to have a significant effect as time goes on.
It just reminded me of something I had forgotten about John's or Keith's involvement in Eberron. I remember talking to my co-designer John, who worked with me on Untold and on Prism Arena. He was a huge fan, and when I pointed across the aisle and pointed at Keith, he was like, "What?"
John just goes full fanboy. It's like
I think he did go over and introduce himself, but
he did.
It's really great. It's one of those things that is very Keith is so incredibly proud of, and it's so exciting just to see someone that you care about very much, to see how much they care about the things that they've made, and it's always exciting to me. And Keith loves talking to people about Eberron, and he would never say no.
So I'll ask kind of one question. I'm curious, like, what are the directions in which you'd like to see games being pushed?
It's just a small question.
I can say where I want to go as a designer is I want to make fewer games and spend more time on the design of them, and have that be meaningful on the other side. So, like you said, Rory, of the maybe it's going to be a smaller number of high quality games, and I want to be in that number. So I want to spend more time and not, it's a dream of mine not to be so worried about time to market. That's not it. So whether that's a technology thing that allows me to do that, to spend more time on the design phase and not on and then add 10 months to make it or 6 months to make it. That would be great. So technology or something being in there, but then also having that design piece come through. I would like also to be, I say this, I'm so into components. It's so into the product of something, but I really don't like minis games. And I don't really like, but that's just not my style. That's not my jam. And so if I was a minis person, I probably would be like, oh, I want more of those. But I think I would like also, these are also my dreams. I would like people to not look at a game that has simpler mechanics as for children or for somebody else, or is not a hobby game. I think that equating the complexity of the rules of something to quality, I would like that to kind of go away. So those are my dreams.
I would love the removal of the word filler from the industry, because it's very dismissive. Because it's a light, small game, and it's like, do you know what? It's still a freaking good game.
You mean a finely tuned game?
Finely tuned. Yeah, I mean, my main bugbear on it is something like the Great Dalmuti. This fantastic card game that I absolutely love, but it is seen as a filler, and it's just sort of like, I have played that game for like 4 or 5 hours solid, like multiple times.
Yeah.
Jen,
like Jen hiding by the wall like that, going,
No. I have to plug in, and I was far away from my plug. So.
All right. Can I check how we are for time? Because I'm very conscious we're at,
I don't know,
90 minutes.
Yeah. Well, we normally wrap up around the next sort of like 5 or so minutes anyway. So
yeah, sounds great.
We will be all
Sorry, I gotta figure out. I'm like
totally comfortable.
No, you look like a teen in your bedroom.
I know. So anyway, John said, and he had a TikTok, and he totally mentioned me, and then he slid into my DMs. Okay, there we go.
You slipped into that like far too easily.
Oh, dearie me! God damn you, Jen. Oh, so what's coming up this year for Twogether Studios that you're allowed to tell us about? Now, obviously, you are like the queen of Twogether Studios, so you could tell us anything.
Yeah. So we start looking at our general design, and this is what we want to do more of this year, is to try to kind of present more of what we do as designers rather than the individual games that we put out, because we actually do a lot more design work than we were part of a collection of micro RPGs that came out by Simon & Schuster at the end of last year. We did some work for Podium Audio and did some small RPGs in correlation to their some of their releases for new books. So really to kind of look at our overall design stuff rather than shoehorn individual titles that we do that we are self-publishing. But that said, we have another Eberron book coming out at DM's Guild. Currently we have, with our imprint called KB Presents, we have 2 top 5 publications there. And so we're coming out with another book and more articles as well. We have some partnerships for digital, and I am working on 2 other projects.
Secret projects.
2 potential games. And a lot of times we work with people, we kind of we've said no before. We kind of, when we're working with partners on stuff, we really get to know their fan base, and sometimes we like the media. I choose not to get too involved with somebody else's fan base, depending on what their vibe is. So but all these are 2 things that are very exciting that I'm working on. And they're certainly smaller games that are much more approachable. But I'm excited about them nonetheless.
Cool.
Yay! And also surviving a continued worldwide pandemic is up there.
That's the most important thing.
Yeah. And as Keith and I are getting older, our mothers are both getting older. So we're spending a lot of time with our aging parents right now. So.
And it's tough with distance.
Yeah.
So you're with your mom at the moment, are you?
Yes, she's in Florida.
You're literally being the teenager.
I know, I'm literally hiding. I think that's maybe why I slid into it so quickly earlier. Yeah. Mom.
It's just like, anytime you go home, there's always that immediate, oh God, yes, I am actually the child in this situation vibe.
Yeah. We've certainly reached an age where sometimes those roles are flipped, but but it does come out every once in a while. So yeah.
Oh, God damn it!
There's actually, so on I think it's on TikTok. There's an Irish young woman who does these brilliant skits on like coming home from college. People bursting into their bedroom. When your mom's friend comes for 5 minutes and stays the whole evening, and they're just like these 60-second. I'll have to get the name.
I'm a total TikTok freak, by the way. I love TikTok. So yeah.
I filter my experience through my children.
Yeah.
I'm like, just show me the good stuff, and then.
Yeah.
Yeah, I filter my experience through Steph. It's just.
I was going to say it's kind of an aside, but I don't know if you and Keith are aware of this guy Tom Scott, who he kickstarted a book which is called DM Yourself, and it's a guide for how to play printed kind of scenarios in solo play, and he gives you guidance on how to do
cool.
that. But I think it's actually really interesting to read from the perspective of how the information is presented, because especially now, so many more people are playing solo.
Yeah.
And he's trying to guide people on how to work with essentially material that's presented for just a DM to read and present to the group. But I think it might actually be interesting to read it in terms of, because he's kind of going, well, you try and skip this bit, read this bit, like ignore this, and it might give an interesting take on structuring some of the information a little bit differently to so it kind of ticks more boxes. And
I'm really intrigued and I'm excited about reading that, because it's one of those things too about designing solo games where you think there's less peer pressure, positive pressure at the table, so that you can just bail out when there's a lot of friction or something. So how do you kind of keep people engaged? So I'm kind of curious how he works with that and such. So yeah, that sounds cool.
Cool.
Excellent.
All right, let's wrap it up there then, folks. This, Jen, is where you get to plug the crap out of everything. Best bit. So how can folks get in touch with you?
Well, first, if you want to learn more about the Adventure Zone game, go to theadventurezonegame.com. And you can also find us and all of our games at Twogether Studios, togetherstudios.com. And there's all sorts of contact us, design information, wholesale information, and press information there. Cool. And of course, we're on Twitter and Instagram. We're on TikTok, but I don't post any videos. I just watch everybody's videos and get excited.
So yeah, you can find Twogether Studio at, surprisingly enough, Twogether Studio on Twitter. And I'm assuming that's the same for Instagram as well, yeah?
Yeah, there's an S at the end. Interestingly enough, there's a Indian bridal company that does photography called Twogether Studios. So sometimes people tag us in like these beautiful weddings from Mumbai and such. So you can follow them and you can get those beautiful photos. But if you want Twogether Studios and know about games, it's at Twogether Studios with an S and on Instagram.
You haven't figured out how to cross-sell, no?
No, every once in a while I repost their photos because they're beautiful and there's a lot of time there.
But you just like Photoshop a game into the picture.
Yes.
And put it
like,
out.
Just a couple just longing and then like an Illimat in between,
Like hovering and glowing.
Yeah.
No, you have this this stunning bride and this beautiful groom, and they're both wearing some lovely Bureau balance hoodies.
Yeah, will your future together be an adventure zone? Yeah. See?
Oh, yeah. We do have to ask this as well. Has anybody spoken to you about mittens?
About mittens from Bernie Sanders mittens?
Yes.
No, but a couple of people on Twitter on my personal Twitter, which has my name. But I did make sure that I retweeted Jenn Ellis, the real Jenn Ellis who knitted Bernie Sanders mittens, who is a full-time teacher and really is like, here's the pattern, guys, make your own. So
I think that's actually been really interesting. I've like kind of heard how he, like, I'm assuming it's his team.
Yeah.
They just launched on the merch straight away and are using it to raise money for charity. Yeah. Like, I think that's just really, really smart to kind of acknowledge what's happening.
Yeah.
And then run with it as far and as fast as you can.
Yeah. there's an artist from Portland, Oregon, where we're based out of, called Mike Bennett, who he does a lot of wood cutouts of things. He did this porch zoo during, and he's a delight on Instagram, Mike Bennett Art. And he did a Bernie cutout and then put it on his porch, and then people could come up and like sit next to and take their photo. And he auctioned it off, and then people went on top of that and matched it, and $8,000 for Meals on Wheels for
nice.
Yeah. And that's what I love about when people use memes for that on the internet. I love that. So.
Yeah.
Memes for the power of good, y'all.
Yeah.
That's all cool. All right. Well, if you want to get in touch with me and him, you can find us at We Are Hub Games, of course. Individually, Rory is at Rory O'Connor. I am at Idle Michael. Rory, what's the plan for Friday and next week?
You're asking me to think ahead.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Who's our guest for next week?
No, actually, we're trying to get Tony Cerbriani from USAopoly.
Nice.
Just waiting for confirmation. And I think it's the weeks after we have people booked, so it's not 100% confirmed.
Cool. Well, you can follow us on social media. We'll get that sorted.
Yeah. If they back out, we can always put Keith in, and he can have the other side of the conversation of like how it's really like working with him.
What's Jen really like to work with?
Yeah, the dating game, but like interview sort of thing. So tell us the truth. Who really does all the taxes and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah.
Well, no, it should be. We asked Jen a number of questions, and then we posed them to Keith.
Yeah. What did Jen say?
Oh yes, definitely.
Like Mr. and Mrs.
Nope.
Yeah.
That's all right. Yeah, we'll be back on Friday at 2:00 UK time. Don't know what we're going to do. We'll see.
Some kind of development, I think.
Some kind of development stuff.
Or playing. Let's see. We can play. It's a while since we've played Combo Clash.
Actually, yeah, that might be an idea. We could do that. Oh, and of course, don't forget, folks, you can also pick up the Adventure Zone game right now. It'll be available, you said, Jen, in the UK this week?
Next week at theadventurezonegame.com.
Cool.
And currently, and if you go to adventurezonegame.com, there's a map of all local retailers that carry the game as well. So
nice.
Cool. I am really curious. Who's warehousing? This is a dumb question. Who's warehousing it in Ireland?
Well, we work with a company called ShipBob. So they have, and usually in the US and other places, they have their own warehouses. But the Ireland one, they use somebody else's, and I don't remember their name.
Okay. But
they just kind of white label it. So
yeah. See, these are the conversations we have when we're at conventions together.
Yeah. I'd be like, here it is.
Yeah.
That's this guy. Cool. All right. As always, thank you very much indeed for watching, folks. It's an absolute pleasure. Jen, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
Your patience and your loveliness.
Yeah,
we will catch you all on next.
Actually, there's no. You're using it wrong, right? You're using it wrong.
We're messing up now. So this is the end. This is where we wave. Thank you very much indeed. Goodbye. Goodbye, everybody.